effectively use it to gather up like unity and support towards a common cause. And then finally, we're going to reflect back on what we've learned and like how to implement what we've learned into like your goals and what things that you're passionate about. So first, let's start off with what is a call to action. A call to action is an instruction or to an audience that is designed to provoke an immediate response. These can be seen in emails, and then where we use them.
Hi everyone, I'm Sadhana. I'm also going to be leading this part of the training. So does anybody know what makes an effective CTA? Oh wait, no, we have to go on the next slide. We skipped a slide. There we go. Does anybody know where we use CTAs? You can go ahead and put it down in the chat, or you can unmute yourself. Anyone? Yeah, so when we're planning events, this can be like to sign a petition. It can also be when you're trying to recruit volunteers or interns. You can also be asking for donations. A rally is a good example. Yeah, these are all good examples of when and where to use CTAs. You move on to the next slide. So what makes an effective CTA? What makes an effective CTA? Oh, people are still. What makes an effective CTA includes really specific language, command verbs, and basically a sense of urgency to make people take action. So we're going to look at specific things that make an effective CTA on the next couple of slides. So number one is a simple action and clear instruction. So words like donate, click here, find out more, join us, depending on the event or situation, the more clear and more simple it is, the better result and response you'll get. And another really important one is giving people a compelling reason to take action. So, depending on your topic of interest, saying things like this will give us a better future, or make an impact, or things like that can really give you a better response. An effective CTA conveys a sense of urgency. So you want to make people want to take action, and so the more urgent you make your message sound, the more likely they are. And then, oh, sorry, is somebody trying to say something?
Yeah, so basically, you want an instant response from your CTA. This means like an instant like confirmation, like a follow-up, like stuff like that, because you feel good. Like once you know that you've like taken an action and you've made an impact, it makes you want to like continue making impactful decisions and like putting your time and effort towards things that show like what you're doing is like there's a result and it's paying off essentially. And then so with that, it's like the follow-ups, the emails, like you want to keep in contact with these people once they have like followed through with your CTA. Right, so then a CTA should be really easy to find on your website. It should be at the beginning and end of every communication. It should be on your social media page when you're writing to officials. Like it should be really easy and clear to find so that people know what you're fighting for or what you're pushing towards like right away. So now we're gonna go through a few different CTAs and we're gonna discuss whether or not they're effective or not. You can read them and then leave your thoughts in the chat, or if you feel super passionate about something, go ahead and just say it. Can everyone read those okay? Like the image is clear enough on your screen and stuff. If not, we can have someone read them out. But
So something to think about for the March for Our Lives is they have a very good command word. They're asking people to march, and so that's a very specific thing, and it's compelling and it's urgent. And they use words like demand and talk about community, and they say at the end the collective voices of the March for Our Lives movement will be heard. And so those are all very important parts of a CTA. And then does anybody want to take a shot at this one, Sunrise Movement, and whether or not this is effective? Luca said the March for Our Lives was specific and visually appealing. So for Sunrise Movement, yeah, and then the date is also really important in a CTA. If you're asking somebody to come to a certain place or an event, it makes it more specific and clear. What about this one? Yes, so the Sunrise Movement CTA is not clear. It's a little bit more broad rather than being specific. Yeah, there's no clear action that's really being asked to be taken. It's more like a sense of like explaining what they're fighting for in general, rather than a specific event or action that they're asking people to take. Alrighty, so why might we post CTAs on multiple channels simultaneously? Anybody want to take a shot at this? The key reasons for why are because it'll allow you to broaden your reach. And so you'll be able to reach more people and they'll be able to come to whatever action you're asking for. Exactly. So it'll reach a broad audience. You can also, it's also very important to understand that when you're trying to reach different audiences, you have to take different approaches in your messages. And so this can allow you to reach different audiences. It can also allow different people with different access to different devices to have access to it, depending on which social media platforms, whether it's word of mouth, so forth. Yes, Facebook for the boomers. Yeah, so reaching different audiences is also very important. Alrighty. True or false? Every good communication has direct or indirect CTA. True or false? True, true, true. Everybody's saying true? Yes. Every direct communication or indirect communication has a CTA, and it's sort of like the purpose or the central point of any good communication. And it's sort of the thing that you ask yourself before sending something out, like, why do you want somebody to read this? And what is the point of this message? So it's also sort of whatever you're trying to spread awareness about should be the central point, and using specific words and conveying a sense of urgency is always important when trying to get your message across. So
you want your communication to be engaging, and a CTA is like the best way to do that.
Alrighty, so this is showing again, like in different communications, there should always be a CTA at some point, beginning or end. So where do you guys see the CTA? somebody said the last paragraph. Yeah, exactly. Asking for a response. It is really in the beginning and the end. Yeah. So basically, the best way to do it is to put it in the first sentence because that is the main subject of the email. But putting it at both the end and the beginning just sort of yeah, and it should be throughout. Olivia made a good point saying that it should consistently make the CTA throughout the communication, and I think this email does it well. And then it is important to always remember that, you know, each communication should only really have one objective and not multiples to make it clear. And so I think that's what a CTA should do, is to make the message clear and not varying. Alrighty, Hannah, do you want to take this?
Yeah, so basically we're gonna do some like small group work, and we're gonna try to create an effective CTA. Doesn't, if you have a cause or an idea in mind, like perfect, like take this time to like try to really like nail and perfect some different CTAs for that. Or if you want to do some, CTA stands for call to action in the comments, sorry. Yeah, so take this time to like do it for like your specific organization or whatever you wish, or if you have something completely hypothetical, that's great too. But before we jump into that, we're just gonna review the best practices for that really quick. So yeah, so simple action, clear instruction, compelling reasons to take actions. You want to know, like, people want to know why are they doing this and what's gonna like happen as a cause to it. They need to know like why they should do it now and why this is such a pressing issue. And they want to you want your CTA to include an instant response, like instant gratification, sort of like a text back confirming, or like in a follow-up, or which has to do with the next one, or like something that you can do immediately, just to keep it like super engaging. And then an effective CTA is tailored for a specific audience, so it might like vary. If you're targeting like older people, like Lucas said, like your CTA that at the end of like a Facebook message might be a little different than one on like an Instagram or like an email sent out to students. So you really want to tailor it towards your audience. And then with that, it should be at the beginning and end at every communication. So now I think we're gonna get into groups, right?
Yeah, we're gonna get into groups, and basically all the groups I've done, if you had an issue in your name, I grouped you by issue, and the steps group, I have kind of basically mixed you up with a bunch of like folks working on ed equity, so you should have like at least 2 steps people per group, FYI. So I'm gonna go ahead and read out the breakout rooms. So breakout room 1 is Annalise, Avery, Grace, and Lily. Breakout room 2 is Devin, Eva, Hannah, and Hope. Breakout room 3 is Krishan, Delina, Jaslyn, Luli, and Nadia. Breakout room 4 is Audrey, Lynn, and Madrid. Breakout room 5 is Amaya, John, Lauren, and Luca Bed. Breakout room 6 is Alexandra, Anita, and Olivia. Breakout room 7 is Alexandra Schaefer, Paul, and Sadhana. The first one was Alexandra Rojas in breakout room 6. Breakout room 8 is Louise, Luca, and Olohitare. And breakout room 9 is Nyana, Robin, and Sol. Are there any folks that didn't have at least one other team, if you're in a team that you didn't have your teammate in your group? Okay, without further ado, we're going to go ahead and go into breakout rooms for 10 minutes to craft an effective call to action. So you'll get the invite now. Hey, Luca. While we're waiting for folks to come back, do you want to report out on what your group talked about?
Yeah, so we went through ours pretty quickly. We talked about de facto segregation and the boundary analysis because the two people in my group are like pretty involved in like diversity and like race and MCPS. Like one of them was doing MSP and the other's part of Mocha for Change and MSP. So we talked about kind of like a call to action for a community boundary analysis discussion. So yeah.
Did you write down the boundary analysis or the CTA?
No, we just talked through it.
Okay. If you were to put it in an email or a speech, for example, maybe Louise, can I ask you, like, how would you do that call to action? I put you on the spot because I know you can take it.
This is kind of like a summary of what we were saying, but kind of the diversity of our area isn't reflected throughout all of our county. And a big part of that is because we segregate people based off of area instead of inclusion. So we tend to push people that don't look the same away from each other instead of bringing them together so we can learn more about each other and learn to coexist.
So what's the actual call to action?
We were talking about
like if you were to tell someone like this is what you need to do, how would you say it?
We were saying like there would be I think they're called town hall meetings to discuss like further action, and like if it was a post you could swipe up on it to get more information about like time and all that stuff.
So it'd be a call to action in Instagram.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Can we have maybe one other group share the call to action that they came up in their group, or if you came up with several, and then if other groups can go ahead and put it in the chat what their calls to actions were so that we could see all those examples before moving into our debrief, that would be really great. So do we have another volunteer? How about Lynn's group, Fridays for Future? What was your call to action?
Yeah, Madrid, Audrey, go.
So basically we just focused on our personal experiences with what we're passionate about and focusing on like why we're passionate about it and telling people that, and then harping on like what they can help us with in terms of our goals.
And so what is the specific action that you want people to take? Sorry.
As for right now, it's just recruiting people in our school and also in New Jersey in general.
So if you were to ask someone to do the call to action, what would you say?
I guess like what I would say is, well, specifically for me, I joined the group because I was interested in the environmental racism part of it, right? And so I would talk about how, you know, there are the most amount of Superfund sites anywhere is in New Jersey, and 101 of those Superfund sites are near communities with mostly people of color. And because of that, like this made me go crazy about like why is this happening and why is this an issue that hasn't been talked about or that most people don't know about at all. And so because of that, like that's why I joined, and I think that's why other people should join too, because it's something that people need to know about and that people need to step up about.
All right, thanks for sharing. Folks, please put your CTAs in the group so that we can get examples of some other calls to action, and then I'll pass it back to Sadhana and Hannah for the debrief. So Sadhana or Hannah, do you guys want to take it away?
Yeah, we can go ahead and do the debrief. So this is definitely questions for you guys and what you guys think your biggest takeaway from this presentation was on CTAs. And so if people want to go ahead and put it down in the chat where they can unmute themselves. What was your biggest takeaway from learning about CTAs and how to make them effective? I can't really answer this question for you, so. Anyone? This can be anything.
I
Yes.
can take it. All right. So one thing that I kind of learned is like being really specific with your call to action. So for my call to action, I was trying to, I was saying basically to create a diverse curriculum in our county. But I said have like a wide range of, literature and like in our English curriculum. And I thought like I was told that was not specific enough. So I like chose a book that I thought really reflected like African American history. So I said kind of putting the book that I chose was like Invisible Man. I was like having Invisible Man in English literature in like high school, and like that was more specific. And
exactly. And the more specific, the better, because people are more likely to respond and it makes it easier for people to understand. So thank you so much for sharing. And then in the chat, I see people are responding. So yes, specific, being specific as possible is super important. And making sure that the objective is the main point of the communication. So the CTA is the most important part of any communication. Yes, it needs to be concise action. And so like the more, like especially if it's an event, like the time and place, and yes, command verbs are very important.
Can I ask Krishan, like, can you, the group that you were in, can you share the specific command verbs that you use, the specific calls to action? One thing that I'm missing from this conversation are specific examples. So if folks can share that, that'd be really great.
We actually didn't go over any specific examples right before we got to that point.
So what would you, like, based off of the conversation, what, like, off the top of your mind, what would be a good call to action in your opinion?
Specific amounts of money, if that's what you need for a group.
Right, so like if you're raising money for donations, like make it like you want to hit this specific number. And it sort of is like, okay, like it's a goal and you can sort of push people to reach that goal.
Okay, thank you.
Lynn has a great point that making the action something that the audience is able to do and it's realistic. It goes back to our SMART goals idea, right? Of like, how is something achievable? So that's a great point.
Alrighty, so question number 2 is, what do you think is difficult about creating a call to action? I know sometimes being specific can be hard because you have to really know what you want and what your goal is in order to craft it. So what do you guys think is the most difficult part? Come on, y'all. Anyone?
I know in my group we were talking about how it's kind of difficult to like connect everything together in terms of like the legislation and like getting people to like care and like feel that sense of urgency.
Yeah, for sure. Making people passionate about the same thing that you're passionate about can be hard. Oh yeah, choosing one CTA when there's so much to get done, right? Well, so staying on topic is really important when you're trying to get something done. Yes, being well versed in all the steps. You should hit each and every one of the sort of best practices that we showed in the slides to make sure that your CTA is effective. Yeah, modifying a CTA to hit different target audiences and knowing who your audience is. Exactly, yeah, those are all really good points. So question number 3 is, what comes easiest to you? So which part do you think is the easiest part of crafting an effective call to action? Is it the event itself or picking a target? Okay, so like a target audience or like a target topic? Or both? Audience, okay. Yeah, I think knowing your audience first is probably the easiest, and then everything else sort of falls into place. Anybody else? Okay, including it beginning and end of each communication. Anything else, or anything else that makes it really easy? I personally think the command verbs can be challenging, but they're also the easiest part, and they kind of shape the CTA. And so once you have like what you want your command to be, I think that really helps make it easier once you've figured that out. So I think at that we're done with this part of the training.
Thanks, Salvin and Hannah. And one thing I want to say real quick is that we're actually not going to be having any breaks this session. And so feel free to, you know, if you need to use the bathroom or grab something to drink or just take a break from staring at your screen, feel free to do that at your discretion. And so we're going to move into the portion of the session where we're really going to build on the concept of the CTA and have you more opportunities to kind of really think about what that specific call to action is. And we're going to do that through the format of public narrative. So if you can go to the next slide. Before we go into public narrative, we're going to kind of debrief the video that you all were supposed to watch before coming. And if you didn't watch it, if you go back after this session is over, if you go back to your emails, there's a link to it. If you want that context, I think it'll help a lot. One thing I will say before we dive into debriefing this particular video is one thing that I'll own on my part in terms of a complete oversight was not putting a trigger warning, because the video did talk about suicide and LGBTQ bullying, and that is totally my bad. And so if any folks were harmed by my sort of mishap there, if you want to talk to me offline about it, please go ahead and feel free to do that. And if you can have all the questions up, I think there's like one more question. If you can click that, Olivia. And so what we're gonna go ahead and do is if one person can hop off the chat and take a stab at answering any, maybe we can start with the first question. Why was it important to hear James Croft's story? And as that person is sharing, if folks can go ahead and start answering the other questions in the chat, what worked in his story, what didn't work, what was his attempts to create a sense of solidarity, how could he have done that better, how could he have made a more intersectional message, and what was his call to action, and was it an effective call to action, or how could he have improved it? So if folks could start answering that in the chat, and then if we can get like one or two volunteers to answer that, hopping off of their mic or their mute. Can I get a thumbs up if like there was anyone that was able to see the video? Like who was able to see the video? Annalise, can you kind of give a summary about the video and kind of what resonated with you in the video and what you would have liked to see more of?
Yes, sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So, I think when I was watching the video, the video started just like jumping into him speaking. I couldn't tell if it was the beginning because it was very just like already very like engaging, and he had already the powerful narrative of his own like stories in school, how he had felt being like seeing friends and or just thinking like he was totally there was something wrong with him, and like he had that teacher who um, really impacted him because the teacher was saying that like, oh, as a male you shouldn't be dancing, you shouldn't be like it's just not masculine, and um, he had these certain like feelings of like, oh, I like doing this and this is who I am, but then he felt like that was totally not accepted or even an option in his community. So I remember later in the video he was discussing friends who were, or like people in the community, the LGBTQ community, who really were just like made to feel totally unloved and unworthy, and it was like hearing just like basically all the horrible things that they go through. It was so real, so I think that really drew people in to empathize with him. And then he went through sort of like his whole story, how later he became a teacher and he wanted to support his students, but he didn't realize until later that him coming out would support others and be like a role model for others. So that was also really very powerful.
And do you remember what his CTA was?
I think the call to action was really, I would say, when he was asking people to I think he like implied that people need to speak up and say that they are either they identify as LGBTQ so they can build a community and support each other, or just like to say, oh, that's not okay if we see someone bullying someone else in any way, like subtle or very prominently, because like he experienced a lot of very, I would say like very oh, actually, like also in college, I remember now, sorry, he said that like as students and with like our prominent degrees and things, we are visible and we really have a say in how like the community is built. So that was another point that he used.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that really great kind of unpacking of that video. I also would like to bring in the comments from the chats, which are also really, really great. So one of the themes is that although the imagery and it was very evocative the way that James used emotion, he could have done better to be a lot more intersectional in his activism. For example, the call to action that he was, he had, like where you create a video, be out, like someone made a great point about how that's not, I think it was Niana made a great point about how that's not easy for a lot of queer folks. And so how can we be more inclusive? Like how could you have been more inclusive in that like call to action? Like maybe acknowledging like if you're not able to do it, encourage someone who might be able to, or, there's another way of going about that. There's a lot of focus on how important his personal story is in terms of establishing the call to action and like really going towards that. And so, we all, those of us that were here in our module 2 session where we talked about the story of self, as you're thinking about how to create these calls to action, figure out how to bring in your story of self back into all of this. We won't have practice with that today, unfortunately, due to time constraints, but that's something to think about too. How do you bring in your personal story to inspire people into action? And so, I don't know if there's anything else. Oh, and then Lynn also had some great things that she would have liked to explore. Like, he was bullied by a teacher and then he came on to become a teacher. Like, how did that happen? She thought that could have been a powerful arc that he could have explored. And then also, why couldn't he be authentically himself, you know, so that we could have that clarity about his challenge. Those are some really great thoughts here. A lot of great comments in the chat. I encourage you all to check it out, but I'm going to go ahead and kind of go back to a summary of public narrative and how that relates to a call to action. So I'm going to quickly summarize, you know, what all of this is about. We did story of self back in module 2. Now what we're going to do is story of now and story of us. You know, in an ideal world, like I said, we practice all of these 3 elements together. And so I really want to stress the importance of not leaving out your story of self, despite the fact that we're only going to do story of now and story of us today. But, you know, that personal story is really important because it establishes ethos, right? It establishes why people should listen to you. It also helps people realize how they could become like you in order to achieve the call to action that you're going to end your public narrative with. And the story of self is actually connected to the story of us because it is what helps create a sense of community. So if you're a person who's speaking and they don't, in the audience, kind of doesn't really, they're not gonna feel connected to each other if they don't feel connected to you first as a speaker. And then the story of us is right there to help the audience feel connected to each other. And we're gonna explore that a little bit more. The story of now is where you really are painting the story that goes along with your call to action. And the story of now connects with the story of self because it's what gives the audience a sense of purpose, right? And then the story of now also connects with the story of us because it creates urgency. And we're going to talk about that a little bit more. So the point is that you really can't have a full public narrative without all 3. If you're missing the story of self, you have this amazing, well, you're trying to create community, but you can't because they're not connected to you. If you have a story of self, if you talk about yourself, and then you talk about the urgent issues and why people need to attack those issues, you're losing out on the story of us. People are not getting a sense of how they have overcome challenges in order to achieve kind of this, the call to action. And going back to James Croft's story, we had a lot of people that mentioned, I think both Krishan and Lauren talked about how he used the experiences of everyone feeling othered in order to try to create that sense of solidarity. Like, even if you haven't been bullied for being gay, you might have been bullied for other reasons. And so that is kind of what I would have critiqued his story is, like, I don't get a sense of how we've overcome that though. And he didn't really give a sense in the story. So that's what I would question about that. And then the story of, and then if you have like a story of self and a story of us without the story of now, it's like, okay, you know, you're hyping up the audience with your own personal story, with the sense of how the audience can beat collective challenges, but you don't give the call to action. It just like defeats the purpose, right? So hopefully you all can see how all of that connects. And then one thing that you'll see in all of these stories is a protagonist, right? The protagonist in the story of self is you. The protagonist in the story of us and now is, does anyone put in the chat, who is the protagonist in the story of us and now? It's us, right? And so think about that. Think about the challenges that we are facing, right? And how that call to action is the choice that we can make in order to produce the outcome that we want to see in the world. So I'm going to go ahead, if you can go to the next slide. Yeah, and just to kind of summarize, as you're creating these different stories and then you're going to connect them together, make sure that they all have a challenge that the protagonist faces, whether it's you or it's us, a choice that is to be made. And in the stories of self and us, that choice is already made. And then the story of now, we have to make that choice, right? It's the call to action. We have to make the choice to answer this call to action. Otherwise, we're not gonna fix the world. And then every one of these stories has a shared value that's guiding it. So what would you say was the shared value in James Croft's story? Like, what was the value that you think he was trying to emphasize with each of those stories? feel free to hop off of mute or put it in the chat. Compassion, that's one. Does anyone else think of something else? Everyone matters, right? This idea of everyone matters. That's a great way of cutting that value. Yeah. Okay, so let's go ahead and move on to the story of us specifically. So we are going to, before we kind of do this exercise, we're gonna do an exercise together as a group. But before we do that, we're gonna watch a video. So actually, could we go to the next slide? And then can you click on that? And then I'm gonna so we're gonna watch this video, and then I'm gonna go ahead and put questions in the chat. So as you're watching this video, please try to answer these questions at the same time. And Olivia, if you don't mind unmuting yourself so that we could hear it.
Well, when I showed up yesterday, I came with a great deal of hesitation. I know that's like speaking heresy to a lot of people here, but I came hesitant. And it was because I was afraid to believe in a candidate again and be disillusioned again. And I was afraid to pick a losing cause again. And I'm a busy person. I'm a mom, I've got a job, we're leaving on family vacation. And I thought, you know what, I'll just show up. I'll show up, I'll see if it's worth my time. And then I can leave. If it's not going anywhere, I can just leave. It's okay. This campaign isn't it for me. And then I sat down and Marshall started talking, and he started talking about working with Cesar Chavez and marching in Mississippi. And I could feel my heart start beating a little faster. And then I sat down in my group, and men wept who saw Bobby Kennedy shot and felt that loss of hope and a loss of everything that he embodied in that generation. And to have people like Marshall and those men sit there and say that for them, Barack Obama was the return of that hope. I just began to have that hesitation melt away. I felt my heart softening again. I felt myself able to give a little bit more of me to this process. And then we shared our personal stories, and a Catholic and a Muslim and a Protestant and a Jewish man shared their personal stories. And we had just about every race encompassed in those personal stories, all within that faith difference. And I sat there, and in my language, I would say, I felt the pleasure of God in this room. I could feel how special and how big what sits in this room was. And I could feel that this campaign is about something really big and really important. And it's the beginning of a healing for our nation and a healing of generations. And the generations that came before that marched with King and people who are just now graduating from high school, we're all working together. We're mentoring each other and we're moving forward. And I realize it doesn't matter if Barack actually fails me, and it doesn't matter if we win. It does. I'm in it to win it. But this campaign has made us win already.
Hey, stay here, please.
All right, thank you, Olivia. So how are people feeling after watching that? You know, what resonated with you? And where are you seeing the public narrative framework in that speech? I'm gonna ask Madrid to please answer any of those questions. Yeah, off of mute if you please. Thank you. If that works.
Yeah, I kind of, when she brought up like Dr. King and when she brought up like marches, I think it was really powerful because like she's invoking like past like historic examples and kind of equating it to what's going on now or during this campaign, during Barack Obama's campaign. And I think that was really special. And yeah, I think that like kind of like brought that like ethos that like into what she was saying.
Were there any specific images, words, phrases that stuck out to you?
Like I said, like when she talked about like marches in Missouri and like marching with Dr. King, like that was like that like stood out to me. And also the part where she talked about how the people in the room encompass like all races and all religions.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's great. Like, you know, this being in a room with people who are so diverse in age and in life experience, you know, that really combated what I would say, you know, piggybacking off of Grace's point, which is, you know, it was good to hear her talk about her personal doubts and lost hope, because she's able to use the hope that was in that room to overcome that, right? So when we think about it back to the framework of public narrative, what would you say? Okay, let me ask Olivia, what would you say was the challenge in Susan Christopher's story? And what would you say was the choice that she made, and why did she make that choice?
Let me just get here. Okay, so I think that the challenge that she faced was, as aforementioned, kind of losing hope, and the challenge of grappling with whether or not going to the meeting and reinvesting, like emotionally, mentally, in terms of time, and even like in terms of her physical presence there, just like getting into that campaign and not wanting herself to be let down again by a loss. But I think, like you said, the good thing about that was that she showed up and was able to kind of feed off of everyone's energy and overcome her doubts, because she just realized that the campaign symbolized more than what she originally thought. Like it wasn't just about the campaign, it was about the shared experiences of everyone in there, and it was about creating a sense of community. And the campaign really fed off of the hopes and the dreams, the experiences of everyone in that room, and then like the sense of bigness that she created with when she was describing like the sense of God that she felt in the room, like just she felt her faith kind of renewed and ignited in more ways than one. There was like a really lovely duality that she kind of crafted there with that imagery. She was able to kind of really convey the point that, and like she said at the end, it wasn't about the campaign anymore. It was about making sure that the hope that was kind of created in the room by gathering all of those diverse people together continued to thrive, because they found a sense of community and a place, like a common place and a common motivation for them to gather, and for people from all walks of life to kind of come together and reinvest in this campaign.
Olivia, sorry, I just want to keep track of time, but that was a really great explanation. I think it ties to a lot of the kind of observations we're seeing in the chat as well, where, you know, like there's this shared sense of hopelessness, right? It's not just Susan Christopher. She also says that, you know, you all may be feeling this way as well. And what overcame that was the power in the room, right? And so she made the choice to stay. She made the choice to be in it because of the very people. And so there was something I think beautiful that you said, Olivia. I'm going to butcher it, but it was just like, you know, how can we like leverage the power that was in that room, you know, and then the power of the audience, right? So that's what Story of Us is about. That's what you and I will kind of figure out together. The other thing I want to say, I want to highlight Lauren's point. There are a lot of really great points, but Lauren's point in particular about how the outcome was that they already won. You know, just by showing up, just by overcoming the challenge of hopelessness and really like exchanging stories and reveling in that diversity, feeling the pleasure of God. I loved all the points. Avery's like, I'm not religious, but it was touching when she said that. That was a very critical moment of her story as well. You know, so how can you bring those kinds of phrases, images, and words to inspire people? And so the outcome there is like, they won already. You know, I mean, they want to, obviously they want to win for Obama, and that may relate to the call to action, but you can use that, like we're already getting there. This is the sense of hope, and it's a great tie into the story of now. So thanks everyone who shared in the chat, and actually if you can go back, no, actually you don't have to go back. No, sorry, you can stay. And then we're gonna do like a kind of brainstorming exercise of both Story of Us and Story of Now together. So now leading into the Story of Now, what we're gonna really talk about is how to create a sense of challenge in the Story of Now. What are the urgent challenges or a singular challenge, if you want to kind of scope it down, that you really want to kind of put a lot of detail to and really emphasize to compel people to action. Where is the sense of hope? Where is that coming from? And what is the choice that you need people to make? What is the call to action that people need to answer? And so we're going to go back to the call to action exercise. And for the folks that weren't able to delve into those specifics, actually, no, can you leave it the way it is? Sorry. And Luli, if you can take notes in that link, that would be really helpful. So if, actually, no, Olivia, can you take notes? So click the link there. Sure. There we go. Sorry about the coordination mishap. But yeah, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and start brainstorming. So Olivia, if you can delete all the MoCo stuff, and then we're going to start a fresh new, yeah. And so we're going to go ahead and start thinking about what are some shared challenges that you all have faced, right? You all being Generation Z, high school, middle school, I think even one elementary school student, right? A young generation. What are some shared experiences and challenges that you've all faced, particularly in this space? Like we can talk about like what you've experienced generally as what as a young generation, but we can also talk about experiences that we've had specifically in this virtual space for the last 6 weeks. So first of all, like how would you define you all? Like what's the audience?
I would say we're all aspiring activists.
Aspiring activists, aspiring young activists. Yeah. Particularly participants of this workshop, right? Great. So what are some shared experiences and challenges that you've all had? Please feel free to, if you want to hop off of mute and answer that, or if you want to put it in the chat, either way. So what are some shared experiences and challenges that you've all had as aspiring young activists and as participants of this workshop series?
Maybe like not being taken seriously due to our age.
It's a great one. What else? Don't be shy, folks. There are like no wrong answers here. We want to get like a lot of ideas. So please, racism, sexism. Yeah, go ahead.
We've lost our ability to connect with each other on the scale that we used to.
Okay. And why is that?
Well, I feel like a lot of, and I think specifically on all the different like protests and visuals that we've done, there's a lot more constraints on those, and also just in-person meetings are non-existent right now. Yeah. So, and I think that's a really big loss for a lot of people.
So the challenges specifically being in like a COVID-19 world.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about within the series in general, right? Like it's hard to come back week after week and sit through 2 hours, right? It's hard.
So like Zoom fatigue, I think.
Zoom fatigue, yeah. What are some like specific, like, you know, for me, like a specific challenge is trying to get people to speak up. You know, I don't know if it's because people are tired or because they're not confident, but that's something that I've seen, you know, a very specific challenges are the moments where presenters are like, come on, folks, like, let's share it. That's the challenge. What about other experiences? What about positive experiences that we've had? Does someone want to share a positive experience that they've had in this space? Like a specific positive experience?
This isn't, oh, go ahead. Sorry. This isn't a positive experience, but something else is like just feeling like the weight of the world is on our shoulders because like, I don't mean this in offense to any of the adults here, but like, you know, the generations before us have kind of like ruined a lot of things, like, you know, like climate change and all that stuff. And there's just like, it feels like there's so much to fix, and it's all on our shoulders.
The weight of the challenges of the world. It's huge. We have Luca here talking about some of the experiences, just like connecting with people all over. And so when you know, if you use that as a launching point to start brainstorming how to create your story of us, you can talk about a specific moment that you might have had connecting with someone else. You know, that's a great positive experience. Creating change as a collective, strategizing as a collective, learning about creative initiatives, being vulnerable with each other was another shared experience. So these are all really, really great, amazing. Yeah, making so Madrid, like a very specific experience for Madrid was connecting with Lynn, you know, and getting support from Lynn in the Superfund activism that his team is doing. Those are like that kind of specificity is what we want to get out of in this exercise. And so what would be like the shared values that you all share? Probably diversity, right? Like I'm seeing a lot of the connections, making connections with different people. Fairness, justice, equality, ambition. One thing I think I saw was like, you know, what sources of hope are you all getting from each other?
I think other student activists make you feel not alone.
That's huge, right? That's what I was thinking as well. Like this sense of what's powerful about this space that we created is the sense of like, you're not alone. And that source of hope, that's what you need for getting people to do a call to action. Because so much of what prohibits action is the sense of like, I can't make a difference. But when you see that other people are interested, it really drives that. And inspiring to see younger people like Alex, you know, and that's why we're here to help you be taken seriously. So we have this challenge, but we're here because we're exercising our voice because we understand the importance of that. And then I liked what Luca said about constructive non-performative activism. So maybe like a value under that is like being genuine, being humble, being vulnerable. That's what you all have brought to this space in the last 6 weeks. And for those that are just joining us, you're bringing that today. So that's great. Let's move on to 5 minutes, just talking about a story of now. So is there someone that is passionate about an issue that would like to engage in an exercise with me? And then Olivia, if you can continue taking notes, that's great. So can I get a brave volunteer to talk about an issue that they're passionate about? And I'm gonna ask you a series of questions. Go ahead, who's speaking?
Hi, my name is Lauren, and I'm really passionate about preventing gerrymandering.
Okay, cool. So Lauren, I'm gonna ask you a series of questions. For those of us that were here for module 2, this is gonna be similar to the exercise that I did with Delina. So Lauren, gerrymandering, like for those of us that are like so lost about what this very like complex political process is like and is hard for us to visualize why it's such an urgent challenge. Can you explain why it's such an urgent challenge?
Yes, so gerrymandering is essentially a corrupt tool used by certain political parties. Well, it's used by political parties, but it's a tool for politicians to essentially redraw the district lines of their constituency to make sure that the votes are skewed so that, for example, there are more Republicans in the area, so it's easier for them to win, and there are less Black people, so Black people have less representation in Congress, that sort of thing. So it serves as an archaic form of voter suppression to keep certain political parties in power and to diminish the voice of marginalized communities.
And so it's like a way that, you know, they draw district lines to make sure a certain type of demographic is in it. That way a certain party could stay in power, right? That's another way of putting it. So can you explain it? So it disenfranchises minorities, right? It continues oppressing people. What does that look like? What does that mean?
So, for example, I live in District 3 in Maryland, and my district covers everything from Olney, Maryland, to parts of Baltimore, to parts of Annapolis, and parts that are like directly on the Chesapeake Bay. So
And
it's
so for
incredibly
folks that are
gerrymandered.
not from the Maryland area, that's like a wide swath of like land, and it's like a weird boundary. Is that what the point that you're trying to make?
Exactly. Yeah. And for example, like Jamie Raskin's district, District 8, is very much so, it only goes into Frederick County a little bit to ensure that like it very much so is a heavily Democratic area. Meanwhile, and so that's really just how it manifests. It gets its term because there was a Congress member in Massachusetts who drew a district so corrupt that it looked like a salamander.
So if we can just focus on like, so what is the lived reality of the people that are being oppressed by this policy? What does that look like?
It means that their vote does not truly equal their vote. It means that they are drowned out by the political parties who are more prominent in that district or by the
their lives?
demographic groups. What
does that mean for their lives?
It means that their views are not reflected in the policies that are surrounding them.
And like, what does that look like in terms of issues, in terms of access to like government services, etc.?
Well, ideally,
if folks have any other, like, if you want to weigh in, please feel free to go ahead and weigh in on the chat.
Ideally, you vote for candidates who will benefit you. So like, for example, if you're a teacher and there's a candidate who says, I'm going to raise teachers' wages by $20,000 each year, you're going to want to vote for that candidate. However, if you vote for that candidate, but it doesn't matter because of how the districts are drawn, then your voice is not heard and that policy will not be reflected, thereby impacting you economically.
What I'm trying to kind of get you to do is talk about the nightmare and the challenge, not necessarily, we're going to get to the hope too. What you were getting at, like if teachers can vote for increased pay, right? Let's flip that, right? And talk about what is the reality of teachers all across the country right now, right? They're underpaid. They are taking they're paying for school supplies out of their own pocket. They are expected to, learn these new ways of teaching. They have so much pressure on them, their quality of life is lower. So that's kind of what I'm trying to get at in terms of like the nightmare, really paint what the nightmare is of the issue. Does someone else want to maybe add any other ways of like, how is gerrymandering? How is that really affecting the lived realities of people? Any other thoughts? Luca, can I ask you to weigh in on here? Like, how else would you paint that nightmare?
Could you repeat the question? I was typing to Alex in the chat.
Oh, no worries. So my question is like, Lauren brought up this really amazing example about gerrymandering and how it keeps people from really, from properly having their voices be counted. And so my question that I'm really trying to push here is, what is the nightmare? What are the consequences of large groups of communities not being able to have their voices be heard?
I'd say that, like, for example, if certain BIPOC communities are left out, for example, in our area is very much so Latinx. And so if those voices are left out, there won't be enough funding for, I don't know, maybe like healthcare in that area or education in that area. There's a wide range of issues, and that community will be severely underserved if their voices aren't heard. So there's a real nightmare in terms of which communities are being served and which communities aren't. I don't know if that helps.
It's getting there, but like, what are people not having?
I guess like a lot of people aren't having access to quality education. Maybe there aren't enough teachers at schools, or for example, for ESOL programs, there
So
aren't
let
enough
me
teachers.
ask, like, this is a great path, but like, if you don't have access to quality education, what does that mean for your life?
Essentially, sometimes you won't be able to pursue higher education, or you won't have the resources to do so.
And if you don't have those resources, then you can.
Then you can't
know,
get you can't get a high-paying job. You won't have enough money to raise your kids, and it's just an endless cycle.
Yeah, you might have to work 2 jobs, be exhausted, drowning in health, like healthcare issues, because you're not able to afford insurance, not able to invest in preventative care. Student debt is a huge way, a huge way to kind of talk about this nightmare. Olohutare, and also please correct me if I'm pronouncing your name wrong, but do you want to talk about the nightmare of student debt? If you don't mind hopping off of mute.
I'm
Oh,
sorry.
Abby. Sorry, go ahead, Abby.
Could you repeat that?
So you mentioned student debt. Why is student debt such a nightmare? Can you paint the story of why it's such a nightmare?
Well, you could, like, let's say for instance, I can't get enough scholarships to pay for college, and that means I'm gonna have to, like what you said, work my butt off, working 2 jobs, maybe 3, going to school, and then by the time I even finish, I'll be drowning in so much like student debt, or like I might not even make enough to take the classes I want to take or pursue the career I want to pursue, and it discourages a lot of minority students or just students in general, and they don't pursue that further education.
Thank you, Abby. Yeah, that's a really great, it's really getting towards painting that nightmare, drowning in debt. That was very like evocative imagery, working 2 jobs, working your butt off. Like that kind of like specificity is what we need to really talk about these challenges. Otherwise, people won't understand. So hopefully that exercise was useful in terms of really grounding these challenges, not just saying what the challenges are, but really showing the endless cycle that these challenges often cause in the lives of people. And so we're going to go ahead and go into breakout rooms where you're going to try to come up with a story of now, try to figure out a challenge that you want to highlight when it comes to the audience, which is everyone in this space right now, and use what you know about the shared experiences of this audience to come up with a good story of us, and how are you going to use the nightmare of your challenge to answer your call to action, to continue that conversation you were having before. So we're going to go into the same breakout rooms as before, and there are going to be a couple of new folks in some of your breakout rooms. So if you don't mind maybe doing a quick recap, that would be really great. But does anyone have any questions before I go ahead and put you in breakout rooms?
Question, is this story going to be like made by the whole group or by like individuals?
By the whole group.
Okay.
Thanks for clarifying that. Yeah, so if the facilitators can work with the entire group to come up with a compelling story of now and story of us, we were supposed to spend 15 minutes, but we're gonna go ahead and spend 10 minutes on this, and then we'll share maybe one story at the big breakout or big group session. So I'm gonna open all rooms and then see you back here in 10 minutes. Welcome back, folks. I imagine a lot of people might be feeling like they could have spent more time in breakout rooms, but unfortunately, we have a lot to cover, and so hopefully that was at least a little bit of time for you to kind of, get familiarized with this. So we'll wait for everyone else to come back, and then we'll share out. All right. I guess we're still waiting on a couple of people. Welcome back, folks. Facilitators, any of you particularly excited to share your stab of the connecting the story of us and the story of now?
I would go for it. Wait. Do you mean with my examples from my breakout group, or just
If someone in your breakout group might be comfortable to like try to tell the story of, so the challenge here is you're speaking to everyone else in the group, you have a call to action, and you're trying to mobilize this particular group into that call to action by using story of us and story of now tactics. And so you feel like your group is ready to take that challenge?
Well, I don't want to volunteer them. I don't want to tell them that they have to share, but I do think that my group did an amazing job working under pressure in that short time frame, and actually came up with some really good stories of sort of us and stories of now. So Lauren or Lucabet, if you do want to share, I would definitely encourage and support you too.
Lucabet, how do you feel? Or Lauren, either one of you. You both are great storytellers, so.
I can go. So I kind of started with like a story of self, and then
so instead of explaining it, can you just go into it? Like we're your audience, and you are telling a speech, and so just go into speech mode. No pressure. This is a safe space. So, and if folks want to put encouraging notes in the chat, feel free to go ahead and do so.
So okay. So having immigrant parents, like they kind of came to this country kind of knowing that they were gonna get like quality education, and my purpose is like to create like having quality education in my county, and that's kind of what I'm working towards. And speaking to like the young activists, I would like to say that, like, I'm sorry, this is very nerve-wracking. If Lauren can go, and like I'll think about it more and then I'll share. Sorry about that.
It's okay, Lucabet. Go ahead, Lauren. Are you comfortable?
So you want us to talk about our story of us and connect it to our story of now?
So I want you to tell your story of us and your story of now. Pretend that we're an audience and you're trying to use story of us and story of now to convince, and use that to convince us to achieve your call to action.
Okay, I'll do my best. So, as someone, these times are very difficult for all of us, and being out of school and doing remote learning is very difficult. And I know a lot of students and their families are frustrated about not being able to do the clubs or activities or attend the high school dances that they've always gotten to do. But as someone who has been excluded from public school, I've never had these opportunities. So, sorry. Like, so basically, like, I'm trying to talk about how we all have the shared sense of frustration with COVID, and like, so I guess, I'm sorry. So I guess the story of now would, I don't know, but the story of now is like,
I tried to talk about the challenge as I said, vulnerable students unprepared for life, and then I have to explain what an IEP is. So basically an IEP is an individualized education plan, and it has accommodations and support services for students with disabilities. So vulnerable students are unprepared for life when an IEP was supposed to prevent this. These students are at an even bigger disadvantage to their non-disabled peers because their IEP was not upheld and their rights were violated. And the choice is signing a petition that I'm trying to create, where so basically a facilitated IEP, so much explaining. So basically a facilitated IEP is an IEP that is that's upheld through the state and not the individual school district, because usually individual school districts manage IEPs, but all the time schools don't do what they're supposed to do. But both parties, both the family and the school, have to agree to a facilitated IEP. So basically the petition would say that if a school declines a facilitated IEP, then they have to provide a student with an advocate on that student's behalf. So that would be the choice that they're making in signing that petition. And the outcome would be the advocate that would, either the person who is doing the facilitated IEP or the advocate will make sure that the student's rights are being upheld so that students don't continue to be at a disadvantage. So, yeah.
Snaps, Lauren. That was a really great shot at both. Like I said, this framework, you're supposed to learn it separately before you put it together. So I was asking a lot of you all, and you really did great for that first attempt. I love how you start off being like, we've all like felt this way, like that kind of language is necessary. And then you had like a very specific call to action. So kudos to you. I'm wondering, I know Avery, you had mentioned that Annalise and Grace, I think in your group, and Lily came up with something. So I'll give you 3 minutes. Does anyone want to feel brave to kind of convince us to address your call to action? I feel very inspired to sign Lauren's petition and would love another call to action. Maybe Annalise, would you be willing? You've been so good at being vulnerable throughout this series. Do you want to take a shot at this?
Thank you. I guess I can. Yeah, I'll try.
So we're your audience and you're telling a speech. So just go ahead and go into the speech.
Okay.
I'll give you 3 minutes.
Okay, 3 minutes to speak?
Yeah.
Okay.
And you don't have to take all of it.
Okay, thanks.
Go ahead.
Okay. During the coronavirus, we've had so much disconnect and realized that learning about what's going on in our world is more crucial than ever so that we can make change in our world. So many of us have been learning from home. Our parents have been working from home. We really have been seeing the effects of digital divide and how some people are able to afford the technology to continue learning and others are not. Some don't have internet access, others pay for the access to private labs and they have access to things that so many don't. Some students around the world don't even go to school because they're either not allowed, it's too dangerous, or they just can't get there. We know some of you are passionate about climate change and others about immigration rights, others about racism, and there are so many movements like Black Lives Matter now that are affecting all of us, and we need to see that. But the real cornerstone, as my group discussed, of the way we can fight for justice is education. So if you are looking at the real source of where people get ideas and create connections and make lasting impacts on others, it's all through education and teaching people and empowering people to become real advocates and have stories that they can actually tell. So in school, we learn to read and write, and we learn ways of thinking, but we also innovate. So we create projects and we learn how to really advocate for ourselves and for others around us, because so many systems in history and in the past have been degrading, dehumanizing, and oppressive to individuals, like people of the LGBTQ plus community, or just people who don't conform so often, are really targeted for their different uniqueness. And education is a way to equalize the field across all realms. And every great movement begins from educating and learning and spreading resources. So education really needs to be where we focus our points of anger, frustration, and care about the system and justice, so that we can teach the youngest students to the oldest change makers that there's always more to learn, and we need to do this through an equitable education system. Okay, I think that's kind of all I thought of for now.
That was incredible, Annalise. Lulit, while I'm still finalizing breakout rooms, do you want to kind of share how you thought? John is clapping. I see, it's great. I feel super inspired. You want to shout, Lulit, what's in the chat?
You want me to read what's in the chat?
Yeah. While I do breakout rooms.
Oh, it's just a lot of good feedback towards Annalise. Luca said she liked how you were inclusive of different communities that can relate to your specific issue. I really agree with that as well. Avery says she loved the way you connected education as a start of advocacy and also the equalizer. Grace quoted you when you said, education is a way to equalize across all realms. Education really needs to be our focus of anger and caring about the system and justice. Snaps. Does anyone else want to share? Luca, if you want to take another stab at it, now you're ready.
All right. I don't know how much time we have, but I can take
Yeah, I think we're okay. I'm ready to put folks in breakout rooms. So you've been saved by the bell, Luca. But thanks, snaps to Annalise, Luca, and Lauren for being brave. Like, I know that takes a lot of vulnerability, and just I want to uplift that you all did a really great job there. Can we actually refresh the slides, because I just changed it? We won't have time to do like the entire process. Unfortunately, we're gonna go ahead, and I want to be cognizant of everyone's time. So we're not gonna do much of a debrief with, like, we're gonna go into breakout sessions where we're gonna have a debrief of the entire series. And so you're gonna have about 7 to 8 minutes to talk with each other. And I made the groups, hold on, let me just change one group. And we're gonna have some facilitators doubling up, but yeah, these groups should be pretty randomized. Hopefully you'll be chatting with people you've never chatted before, and the reflection questions are in the slides. So I'll go ahead and open those and give you time to reflect with each other.
How did this happen?
Oh,
We're reunited.
we're still.
We saw the
We're still
timer.
everyone else is still chatting. It seems like so.
We saw the timer and we were like, we have to go back. Like,
All right, folks. I know that was not nearly enough time to debrief, but we want to be respectful of your time. In fact, we're probably going to go over 10 minutes. So if you have to hop off early, no worries. I think before we go into the large group share out, I would really love it if Avery could share a public narrative that she prepared specifically for this team. So you'll get one final example with about a effective public narrative with a specific call to action that we want you all to follow. And then Olivia and I will elaborate on that call to action in the next couple of minutes. So Avery, do you want to go ahead and take it away?
Sure.
Cue inspirational music.
Yeah, so I'll just go ahead and start. The question had been sitting in the back of my throat for a while. The catalyst was a regular day at kindergarten when Dakari was reprimanded by the teacher. A regular day in kindergarten, another Black boy in trouble. Come to find out, that year in my majority white elementary school, the only kids sent to the principal's office were Black boys. The effects of this were felt by more than those who sat in the principal's office. Later that day, I went home and asked my mom, why are all the Black boys so bad? At 5, I had already observed discriminatory discipline, but luckily my mom was there to help me navigate and understand my racist world, preventing misguided conclusions and self-hatred. My mom was there for me too when I was 7, and a white girl told me if I got any darker, she wouldn't play with me. My mom noticed my increasing obsession with sunscreen, long sleeve shirts, and jeans on hot days. She stopped the poison of the girl's words from infecting my brain and reaching my heart. Soon enough, I was excited about getting a tan again. My mom fought the world for me, which is why I got involved in activism. I wanted to do that for my Black and brown brothers and sisters. This would lead me to my first internship at a civil rights law firm in Research Tank. I remember the first day. I was so nervous, I didn't know anyone, and I was by far the youngest one there. One of the directors, Megan, met me at the elevator and we walked to Phil's office, the other director. We talked, they explained my assignments, and as I was getting ready to leave, Phil turned to a bookshelf behind him and grabbed a book. If you get anything out of this internship, he said, stabbing at the cover, it will be from this book. The book, The Color of Law, told of how the government trapped African Americans in neighborhoods, sanctioned their defunding, and created an alternate America for Black people, which effectively prevented them from opportunity. I cherished Phil's copy. Any chance I got, I was plowing through that book. I felt like an archaeologist unearthing secrets from the dust. Phil was wrong. The book didn't just enrich my experience at the internship. It changed how I viewed race, how I viewed my world. I understood Black kids weren't bad. I was seeing a combination of unfair government policies that continue today and people's biases playing out in my world. I felt like I had unearthed the key to the solution. It was invigorating. I had the answer. Ending housing and school segregation would mitigate racism, the opportunity gap, the healthcare gap. I had to use this knowledge to create change. We are all archaeologists who've unearthed the key, the solutions to various social ills. We all have the solution and we all want so badly to alleviate these problems we know we can fix. We're all joined by our compassion for our neighbors and our optimism for a better world. Not everyone shares that compassion, that hope. Even among compassionate, hopeful people, you all are a special group. Very few have the fearlessness to come to trainings like this, very well knowing that there is probably someone more experienced than you. Very few can share their wildest dreams for a better future in front of a group of strangers. Very few can sit through 2-hour trainings every week and continue to come back for 6 weeks on end. But you all have come back time and time again. And you all have transformed so much because of it. You all are beginning to recognize your power. I see it in the way Jaslyn and Lauren are so much more outspoken. And Lily, I remember you coming in that first week with a super ambitious plan to get a more diverse teacher body in Houston while also radically changing the curriculum. You've grown so much, as has your team, and your ideas are more tangible than ever, just within reach. This workshop is coming to a close, but it doesn't mean our work here is done. We cannot stop here. We cannot stop this momentum, especially at a time where no matter who we look to, we can't trust either administration to champion our issues.
In the last 96 hours alone, a white supremacist has slaughtered peaceful protesters, decrying the slaughter of an innocent Black man at the hands of police while 2 hurricanes rage on, a pandemic sweeps the nation, and wildfires decimate Northern California. And Biden is shockingly out of touch too. As the people take to the streets protesting the killing of Black people at the hands of police, he chooses a prosecutor as his vice president. Biden will not usher the change we so desperately need either. So it's up to us. We are that change. All of us here will radically change our world. Those of us at Youth Creating Change and the Youth Activism Project can't wait to see what great work you do and really want to help you to do so. In order to help you continue your activism, please fill out this exit form we'll send in the chat, and we'll send an email later so you can continue to provide you with individualized support. You are the change we need. Let's see to it.
If people want to hop off of mute and snap to that.
That was great.
That was amazing.
Incredible. Thank you.
Thank you so much. You guys are so kind.
Avery, I was working on this with Avery prior, and you could ask Avery. I was cracking up because the call to action is this exit form, and she had this beautiful arc, and we ask you to fill out this exit form. It is not a sexy call to action by any means, but it is a critical call to action because this exit form is not only going to help us help you and really, be those archaeologists and take this opportunity to go from this training to bring these skills into the real world. So I really want to emphasize how important your feedback is. It shouldn't take any longer than 10 minutes. We really want to stay in touch with you all. So I'm going to go ahead and put that form in the chat and pass it on to, thank you so much to Avery. Thank you so much to all of you all for creating this amazing space and making it easy for Avery to create such a wonderful public narrative. And so I'll go ahead and pass it off to Luca, who's going to talk about YCC.
All right, guys. So this is the end. Thank you all for coming. Just as a follow-up, and as a member of Youth Creating Change and one of the leaders of the grassroots organizing team, I want to let you guys know about the opportunity to get grant support funding from Youth Creating Change, as well as mentorship and organizer trainings similar to the ones we've been having here. They run all throughout the year. So if you want to come to our interest meeting to learn more about it and to learn more about the grant funding process for your own social projects, and this is generally for people in the Maryland area, Montgomery County, we're having an interest meeting on Sunday, September 20th, and the link is right there. I can try to type it in the chat, but I think it's pretty short and you guys can type that in. So yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say. Applications are for grant funding are due September 30th, and to sign up on that, there's also the link right there. So I definitely encourage you guys to come out. I mean, this is a great opportunity to have more trainings like this, to network with people from all over in Montgomery County with different social change projects. And it's really cool to engage with mentors, older mentors, like John and Robin and Lynn and a whole bunch of other people who've been coming to these. So it's a great opportunity, and I hope you guys sign up, and I'm excited to see you. And that's pretty much all I have to say.
And for those of you that are not in Montgomery County and are not already plugged into YAP's efforts, please, again, if you fill out this form, that's how we're gonna know where to direct you. So please fill it out, and then we'll make sure you're on our Slack if you're not on our Slack already, and etc. So I would love to spend the rest of the time. Folks need to head out. That's okay. Go ahead and say goodbye in the chat. But I wanted to create a space for us to reflect and debrief on our reflections. And so that space is available for as long as people need it. So I'm gonna shut up and go into awkward silence. And if there's anyone that wants to close this space with any final words,
If I could just add quickly, someone in the chat said that the link is, you need permission for the link. Is that for the YCC link or the form?
Oh, okay. I'm gonna go ahead and change that right now, and I'll put it in the chat when it's fixed. Thank you for that. Thank you for already answering that call to action. All right, so does anyone want to Go ahead,
Yeah,
Nadia.
Anika, this is Nadia from the Young Leaders Institute. I just want to say this was an amazing experience as a facilitator. I was even inspired to participate, and I'm just so proud of the work that you're all doing. And I just want to offer a resource for those who are not in Maryland. We are onboarding our 2020-2021 class cohort, our internship program, which starts actually next week. If anybody wants to join young leaders from across the country to work on social justice issues, we are still accepting applications until next week for the for this year's internship program. And I look forward to staying connected with the group, supporting in any way that I can, and offering whether it's training or resources or any type of support. And I just want to say I'm so proud of the work that you guys are all doing. I will drop my email in the chat box for anybody who's interested in the internship program for the 2020-2021 school year. So thank you.
Thank you, Nadia. I want to answer Lynn's question real quick about, is there a way for any of these students to stay connected? That is through our Slack channel. So I'm gonna, join the Slack. Lily, do you want to hype our Slack?
Okay, yeah. So the Slack channel is really great. I've connected with a lot of other youth activists through the Slack channel. There are a lot of different channels. So there's one channel specifically for this module series thing, where you can start conversations about what we've learned here, or meet if you want to like meet with someone who was in your small group, you can do that, or just in like the general rooms. A lot of times, and I've done this, we just say like, hey, app channel, which alerts everyone there, and we leave a link to usually it's a call to action, so like maybe a link to a survey you want people to fill out, or if like you're nominated for something and you need votes, you can go there. Or if you have a question about something, you can ask your question there and people will reply, they'll get in touch with you. You get a lot of resources. So I've gotten resources on starting like a virtual voters registration in Texas because of Corona and all that stuff. So it's really like just like such a great community to meet people and talk with people and get resources and stuff. And so I really think you should join it.
And we're gonna start conversations. I tried to do it a while ago, it failed. So that if you go to Slack, the channel is hashtag, I think, summer series. And so if folks, when we leave, if you wanna share anything, please just share it there and we'll try to facilitate these conversations in the future. But yeah, here's the space is open for anyone who wants to share any last words. I'm gonna wait awkwardly for about 30 more seconds.
Fine, I'll make it more awkward. One thing I wanted to say in the reasons for hope that came up earlier, I do realize absolutely it feels to you guys like you've been left with so much, and it's true, and there's nothing I can do to fix that. But you do have advantages that we didn't have. There were always people fighting for these things. But at the time, most of us got told, my mother recycled at a time where people thought she was crazy to recycle. I grew up at a time where a lot of people weren't even sure there was another LGBT person in their county, maybe even state. A lot of us lived through times when the discussion of whether or not there even was a racism problem with police was the starting point. So yes, you have a lot on your shoulders, but you also have some to build on from what at least some of us have been doing. At least now we can have the conversation, not does racism exist, but what can we do about it? Not should we recycle, but how can we recycle better? Not are there LGBT people, but how can we strengthen them all and get them legally protected. So I absolutely acknowledge that it is overwhelming for you guys. You do have so much on your plates, but please don't think that no one's been doing anything this whole time. And please understand that you have resources at your disposal that exceed anything any previous generation has had. And I'm always amazed by what you do with it.
Okay, before I hop off, I just want to say that this was a really inspiring group of young people, including myself. Everyone made me feel really accepted, and I'm just happy I got to be a part of this. I'm gonna hop off now.
Thanks so much, Krishan.
I can't.
Go ahead, Delina.
I have to hop off really quickly too, but I just wanted to say I really enjoyed this experience, talking to different types of people and learning different ways to like gain. I don't really. I'm learning to be an activist. I don't really call myself an activist yet, but like different ways to learn and different opportunities I can take. So yeah, I really appreciate this workshop, and I can't wait to attend others. So yeah, bye guys. Thank you.
I love this stuff in the chat as well. Grace affirming how inspiring having adults here is, adults who care about young voices genuinely, and just the general level of empowerment. So I wanted to uplift that. Any last thoughts?
Anika, in our group, one of the students mentioned that they weren't able to attend all the sessions, and we were just wondering if you would be sending out maybe the previous slides and modules for any of the sessions that were missed, because not everybody attended all the sessions.
Yeah, that will happen for sure.
Okay, great, thanks.
I'm gonna send folks a quick email now with just the form and the slides, and then I'm gonna send out a more detailed email about next steps.
Great.
Let's do one more thought before we close out.
I'll take it. All right.
Thanks, Bed.
So, I've come to all these all 6 modules, and it's been like very inspirational. And I thank you for creating the space where I'm like not afraid to speak. I know I'm hesitant sometimes, but you know, it means a lot to like talk about, you know, my initiative and what I really like truly believe in, and you know, not feel so anxious, at least sometimes, to like, you know, speak what's on my mind. But yeah, thank you for that.
All right, on that note, I'm not going to leave you all in awkwardness anymore, but I really hope that the connections that you made are going to continue after the series is over. And so another plug to fill out that form so that we can know directly what you all are working on and provide you with that continued support. So snaps to everyone. And Lulit is emphasizing the form again. So it's been a pleasure having you all. Take care.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Wait, are we doing like a follow-up thing?
I don't think we
Bye. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Annalise. I think we're good. I think we're good until Wednesday. So let's just do it then.
All
But
right.
how are people feeling? Good?
I feel like that was a good end.
Yeah.
I
Avery,
Because of Avery.
come through, Avery.
Yeah.
I was so we were working on it and she we did the run through and I was like, my God, it's gonna be so good. So all right, I'll let you guys go. See you all on Wednesday.
Bye guys.
Enjoy the rest of the
Bye. Thank you guys so much.